everyone, nice to meet you. From today, we will talk about Korean grammar theory. I organized the class by dividing into 8 chapters about what you have to need to know in Korean grammar theory and the parts you have to know in general. Let's talk about Korean grammar theory today. Let's start today's class. In first and second lectures, topic is particles. Particles. In Korean, 조사. 조사. I think you have to already heard about this word, which is the most confusing part to foreign students in Korean grammar. The first lecture, we will learn about what particle is and what types of particles are. And we will discuss and talk about it more in detail in the next lesson. So let's go into our class contents. Start. Okay, guys, please look at this slide, what I made for you guys. 한국어 문법론, I will skip the first page, skip the second page. Today's chapter is 조사, particle. Okay, let's look at this page. What the particle is. Particle is a word added to the end of a word. Please look at the orange colored. 체한, 명사, 대명사, 수사, or phrase to indicate a grammatical relationship with other words in a sentence, or to add a certain meaning. Add a certain meaning. Look at the next green colored line. The particle is a dependent morpheme. 의존 형태사, 형태소, you know, but it is recognized as a word. A word. Particle cannot be used alone, and it must always be attached to the preceding sentence. Also, particles do not change form. Do not change form, the last line, and many particles can be used overwritten. It's like overlapped. For example, 비빔밥을 먹어는 보았다. 어제까지만 해도 날씨가 정말 좋았다. 수업 끝나고 도서관에 가서 공부하자. 원피스를 입은 소녀의 모습이 퍽도 아름답다. Now that we have looked at the definition of particles, what is particles? Let's take a look at what particle is and the type of particles. Okay, type of particles, there are 3 main types of particles. Case particles, 격조사, auxiliary particles, 보조사, and connective particles, 접속조사. Let's start with case particles. Case particle is the most important and grammatically used in particles. Okay, you've probably heard about that before, I think. Subject particles, 주격조사, and objective particles, 목적격 조사, and so on. By adding a certain particles, it can be a subject in a sentence and also can be an object, right? Okay, first, 격조사, case particle. It is attached to the end of a word and indicates the grammatical relationship between the word and other words in a sentence. There are 7 main types of case particles: subject particles, 주격조사, objective particles, 목적격 조사. Complement particles, 복격조사, adverbial particles, 부사격 조사, and predicative particles, 서술격 조사. Oh, I missed 서술격 조사, sorry. And nominal particles, 관형격 조사, 관형격 조사, and vocative particles, 호격 조사, 호격 조사. And second, auxiliary particles is 보조사 in Korean. An auxiliary particle is particles that add a special meaning to word. Special meaning. The important thing about auxiliary particles are that you have to be careful to comprehend the meaning of the sentence. It can be attached to several components, such as subject, object, complement, and adverb. Okay? Representatively, 는, 만, 뿐, 밖에, 까지, 마저, 도, 나, 이나, 라도, 이라도, 든지, 이든지, 남아, 이남아, and so on. This is all auxiliary particles. Okay? And third, connective particles. 접속 조사. Connective particle is a particle that connects other words or sentences. In other, the relationship of particle includes list, selection, and opposition. 나열, 선택, 대립. Representative examples are 와, 화, 하고, 에다, 다, 랑, 이랑, 이며, 며 is all connective particles. Okay, then we will talk about in detail about auxiliary particles and connective particles in the 5th chapter later in morphology. Today we will going to talk about case particles, only case particles. So let's take a look at each type of case particles. Move on to the next page and look at the example sentences about subject particle is. Subject particles. Or we can say subject markers. 주격 조사. Let's look at the all examples. Let's first read the Korean sentences below. The colored in yellow is subject particles. Listen carefully my Korean pronunciation and intonation and everyone follow it. Please follow it. Do not just sit and listen. Speak loud is good for your correct pronunciation and long-term your memory. Okay? 바람이 분다. 영미가 학교에 갔다. Please follow me. 바람은 불지 않는다. 영미는 학교에 가지 않았다. 서울에는 순이가 갔다. 나는 미희가 보고 싶다. 누가 이것을 했습니까? 무엇이 이 세상에서 가장 아름답습니까? 저의 아버지께서 회사에 가셨습니다. 선생님께서 과제를 내주셨다. 회사에서 올해 보너스를 많이 주었다. 우리 팀에서 우승을 차지했다. 민수와 송이는 둘이서 손을 잡고 걸어갔다. Okay, subject markers include 이, 가, 깨서, the yellow line, 에서, 이서. They have the function of making the preceding word the subject of a sentence. The subject particles 이, and 가, the representative particles, are phonological allomorphs. In Korean, 의문론적 이형태. 의문론적 이형태 that have exactly the same function. So in the first two sentences, 이 in 바람이 분다, the first sentence, and 가 in 영미가 학교에 간다, are called phonological allomorphs. 이 형태, 이 and 가. If the preceding word ends in a consonant, 이 is used. And if it ends in a vowel, 가 is used. Okay? There are two uses for the subject particles, 이 and 가. First, generally it is used to describe an observable behavior or situation. Second, it is used to emphasize or point out. Point out in order to distinguish a particular things, animals, or person from others. The example sentence written in a sentence, third line, 서울에는 순이가 갔다. In 순이가 is the expression point out a specific object, 순이가. In the same way, in 미희가, 나는 미희가 보고 싶다. In 미희가 is also point out a specific object. Okay? Go up and look at the second example sentence. 바람은 불지 않는다. 영미는 학교에 가지 않았다. In this way, the subject of negative sentences, right? Negative sentences are not expressed with 이가, not expressed, but is usually expressed using the auxiliary particles such as 은는, 바람은, 영미는. Okay, so let's look at the example sentences number 4, line 4. 누가 이것을 했습니까? 무엇이 이 세상에서 가장 아름답습니까? When an interrogative pronoun, 인칭대명사, such as 누가, 무엇이, is used as the subject of a sentence, 이 or 가 must be used as the subject particle. Okay, let's look at the example sentence in line 5. 저희 아버지께서 회사에 가셨습니다. 선생님께서 과제를 내주셨다. The subject particle 깨서 must be added when these words used like 할머니, 할아버지, 사장님, 회장님, 아버지, 어머니, 선배님, etc. It is used to be an object of honor or respect. As a verb, you must use 계시다, 드시다, 돌아가시다, 잡수시다, which means honorific, right? Or use a form that adds prefinal ending. In Korean, 선어말 어미. 선어말 어미. I wrote in orange colored 시 or 시 to a common verb. Okay, let's look at the next sentences. 회사에서 올해 보너스를 많이 주었다. Not 보. You have to pronounce as 보. And 우리 팀에서 우승을 차지했다. The subject particle 에서 has a very special function. 에서 is an adverbial particle that originally and then has the meaning of place such as to or at. And then let's look at the last sentence. The last sentence. 민수와 송이는 둘이서 손을 잡고 걸어갔다. 이서, the subject particle 이서, always takes the form of negative word numeral 이서 and has the meaning of 이 함께, together. There are so many different subject particles, isn't it? The elements and nuance within the sentence change depending on which subject particles comes. So let's move on to the object particle. Let's look at the next page. 목적격 조사. Objective particles or objective markers. Let's first delete allowed. The sentences below, colored in yellow, is objective particles. Okay. Let's read the start together. Start. 철이가 책을 읽는다. 장미가 모자를 쓰고 있다. 그는 약국에 들려서 집으로 갔다. 집으로 왔다. 어디를 그렇게 정신없이 가니? 이 바지의 길이를 좀 줄여야겠다. 장미가 철이의 등을 2번을 쳤다. 병수는 민지에게 따뜻한 커피와 초코빵을 사주었다. 승미는 꽃에 물을 주었다. 송이는 창문에 먼지를 닦았다. There are two types of object markers. direct object markers in Korean 직접 목적격 조사 을 또는 리을 and indirect object markers 간접 목적격 조사 에게 they have the function of making the preceding word the object of the sentence. The direct object particles 을 and 리을 are phonological allomorphs. What it is? 의문론적 이 형태 that have the same semantic function but differ only for if the preceding word ends in a consonant 을 is used and if it ends in a vowel 를 is used. A transitive verb in Korean 타동사 must follow the adjective particles. The direct object marker 을 can be used in way. First, it is used to present an object directly affected by the action of the predicative in a neutral way. Examples are 철이가 책을 읽는다. The first line, 장미가 모자를 쓰고 있다. Second, 직접 목적격 조사, direct object markers is used to distinguish or emphasize certain things or situations from others. In case, an intransitive verb can be used as a verb in many words with the meaning of moving, such as 가다, 오다, 다니다, 걷다, 건너다, 들르다, 떠나다, 출발하다, 지나다 are used. For instance, the second line, 그는 약국에 들려서 집으로 왔다. 어딜 그렇게 정신없이 가니? And by writing in the form of 를, 약국에 들려서 어딜, it functions to limit the scope of the preceding noun, which is the form of 의, can be rewritten the example sentences. The second line, 이 바지의 길이를 좀 줄여야겠다. It's changed from 이 바지를, 길이를 좀 줄여야겠다. Also, 장미가, the next sentence, 장미가 철이의 등을 2번을 쳤다. Is the changed sentence from 장미가 철이를 등을 2번을 쳤다. Okay? The indirect object markers, 간접 목적격 조사, 에게 and 에 have the function of making the corresponding sentence component into an adverb rather than an object in Korean language. This is very different point with English language. 에게 is added after an plus animate noun in Korean 유정명사, such as animals, people, like that. And 에 is added after an minus animate noun in Korean 무정명사, such as things, object, or any stuff like that. From the point of view of Korean language, of course, this becomes an essential, indispensable adverb. 필수적 부사어 in Korean. For example, 병수는 민지에게 따뜻한 커피와 초코빵을 사주었다. The fourth line. 승미는 꽃에 물을 주었다. The last line. 송이는 창문에 먼지를 닦았다. These three sentences are correspond to this grammar concept. Okay, let's move on the next page. 복격 조사 complement particles or complement markers. Complement particle is very simple. 이다, 아니다, 되다. 이다, 아니다, 되다. You just need to remember just three things. Let's read the example together. Aloud. Start. 물이 얼음이 되었다. 병아리가 닭이 되었다. 안나는 외국인이 아니다. 내 동생은 아직 대학생이 아니다. 철수가 유명한 수학자가 되었다. 올챙이가 개구리가 되었다. sorry. The second sentence we have to read 병아리가 닭이 되었다. Okay. The complement marker has the function of making the preceding word the complement of sentence. And there are 이가. Here is something to watch out for. It's important thing. The form of the complement marker, 이가, is the same as the subject marker. It's different. But the function is completely different. For example, 철수가 유명한 수학자가 되었다. The last line sentences 올챙이가 개구리가 되었다. 올챙이가 is subject, right? And 개구리가 is complement. Okay, you know. In other words, the complementary participle has the function of making the meaning of the following imperfect verb. 불완전 동사. 되다, 아니다. More specific, more concrete, and supplementary. Okay. Okay. It's time to go so fast. We will talk about from 부사격 조사 next time. And now, everyone, today we looked at the 조사 particles. First, we looked at what particle is and how it functions in a sentence, and looked at the various types of particles. There is a case particles, 격조사, auxiliary particles, 보조사, and connective particles, 접속조사. And there were 7 types of case particles, 격조사. Please look at this page. There were 7 types of case particles, 격조사, subject markers, objective markers, complementary markers, adverbial markers, predicative markers, adnominal markers, and vocative markers. Among those, today we looked at the subjective markers, objective markers, complementary markers, three particles. Continuing from today, next time we will look at the rest of the particles, adverbial marker, predicative markers, adnominal markers, and vocative markers. After that, we will look at the remaining particles, auxiliary particles, and connection particles. In particles, in detail, in the 5th chapter after the sentence grammar theory lessons in the chapter 3rd and 4th. Okay, guys, you worked hard today. I hope the studying Korean as well as grammar theory will be enjoyable and useful time for you. Say goodbye. See you next time, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye.